We pick up at the bottom of 153B. Yesterday we had discussed, a case of a Shliv Meirah who writes a document to give away some of his property, and then he survives. So, and the giftee, the recipient, claims that was a valid gift. You weren't a Shliv Meirah, and he says, "Yes, I was." So who has to bring evidence? So one view was that we go with his current status, and now he's fine, so he has to prove that he was ill before. And the other goes with the chazaka that the property is in his possession, and so the other guy has to prove if he wants to extract it from him. And now, about halfway down, a little more than halfway down, we have a similar case. Amar Belazar, L'tuma k'machlokas. Regarding tuma, we have the same issue, and it's not. We have a mission. Bika b'yamos hachama reshus hayachid l'shabbos reshus harabim l'tuma. If you have a valley, like an open area, but it's fenced in. So, and in the summer, it's considered Reshus HaYachid, and in the winter, it's considered it's for regarding Shabbos. So it's a Reshus HaYachid that you can carry in, Reshus Harabim L'tuma. But if you have a doubt about whether you've become Tameh, made yourself Tameh, if it's unclear if there was a grave beneath where you walked, so in Reshus Harabim, the rules are different. Reshus Harabim, we assume you're Tahar. Reshus Yachid, we assume you're Tameh. But Bimos like Shamim in the winter, Lukan, then it's always considered a Reshus HaYachid. So if we don't know when it was that you had encountered the suffix tuma, so Rav Yaakov, our same argument would apply. Rav Nassim would say that it depends when you ask the question. If you asked it in the summer, then we assume that you're tahor. If you asked it in the winter, we assume you're tamei. And Rav Yaakov would say that we always considered you tahor because you were in a cheskas tara, right? We assumed that you were tahor before. Now you've encountered a suffix, and so it doesn't matter when you ask the question. Whenever you encountered it, we go with your chazak. And Amarava lo shanu ela shelo avru elav yemos shamim. That is only the case where this valley, it's the first time that like it hasn't had a winter yet that it was enclosed. Remember, I said this only applies if the valley is enclosed with a fence. But you already had a full winter with the valley enclosed, then then it's considered a private domain.
And then he's Tameh? Wait, then he's Tahor.
Sorry, one sec here. I've got my volume too low.
Wait a second. In
Say again?
If you consider it Geshamim, if there was a Geshamim, then it's always Reshut Yachid, and then he is Tameh, right? No, he's Tameh. What do you say?
In Yemos Shamim in the winter, so it's considered a Reshus Yachid, and so you are Reshus Yachid, suffix tuma, you're Tameh.
You're Tameh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now moving on to back to the Mishnah. So Chachamim Omrim Hotzimei Chaver Elav Araya. So what was our Mishnah again? Let's come back for a second. Yeah. If the document doesn't say anything about a Shliv Meirah, and he says, but I was a Shliv Meirah when I wrote it, and now I'm better, so I'm taking it back, and the recipient says, no, you were healthy when you wrote it, so it's a valid gift. So Reb Meir says you have to the giver has to bring a raya that he was a shliba rav. Chachamim say no, it's in the it's already in the um in one's possession, so the other one has to provide proof. So raya b'mai, what kind of proof are we talking about? Rav Huna Amar, raya b'edim, you bring witnesses, right? Witnesses that whether when the guy wrote the document he was ill. Rav Chizda v'Rabba bar Rav Huna Amrei, but Rav Chizda and Rabba say um, all the proof that's needed is that the Beis Din has certified the shtar. So when you have a shtar, you take it to Beis Din and you have them certify that it's valid. Like they check it out, where the Adim, are the Adim good Adim and whatever. And so they can be presumed to have investigated the circumstances or to have had the Adim confirm what was going on. So Rav Huna Amar Raya b'Edim, Rav Huna says Edim, witnesses, kamiflage, beplukta, Rabbi Yaakov, Rav Nosson. What he thinks is that what is the argument between Rav Meir and the Chachamim in the Mishnah? It's the same as the argument between Rav Yaakov and Rav Nosson. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Nosson, Rabban, and Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Meir would hold basically it's how do you apply the principle of chazaka? Is it do you go with chazaka or hashna, right? What is it now? So if the guy is healthy now, then we can assume that we go with we don't know if he was sick before, or chazaka of the where the property is. Rav Chizda Rav Huna, right? Raya b'kiyum hashtar, and the other view is that it's not the aiding, but it's the kiyum hashtar, the certification of the contract of the document. What's the argument? And it's whether if I admit that that I wrote this document, right? Then do we need certification of basing? So I say yes, this is the document, but there's some problem with it, right? Like I wrote this document, but the Adam weren't valid or something like that. So one view is that if I admit I wrote the shtar, then it doesn't need certification. We assume everything in the shtar is correct because I admit that I wrote it. So presumably it's valid.
But still, isn't a question whether he was sick or not sick? Isn't that the question? Well, how does it help to know if he wrote it or didn't write? I mean, yeah,
we'll see.
wrote it.
Yeah, we'll see in a second. Rameir Savar, Rameir says if you admit that you wrote a document, you don't need kiyum. So once we know that the document is valid, like here the guy is saying, like I wrote the document, but the circumstances were that I was sick and now I'm better. So Rameir says doesn't matter. Right? You've admitted you wrote the document, so it doesn't need any further investigation. We'll act according to the document. And the rabbis say no. Even though you've admitted you wrote the document, you still have to verify the circumstances, right? So now you're disputing the circumstances, or you're saying that the circumstances mean that the shtar is invalid, so you can say that. But the Gemara says, but we've already had this argument. Like, what do we need this mission for? We already know that this is an argument between Reb Meir and Chachamim. The Tanya, we have another brisa. Ein nemanim lepasla. If you have witnesses authenticating a document, then we don't believe them when they say no. This document is not good because they've already signed it. Reb Meir. The rabbis say no. You believe them, right? So it's kind of the same thing, right?
Believe them.
Excuse me. If they've admitted that they signed it, then that's what they're arguing about, right? Whether they can still nitpick or whether they can still punch holes in it and say we signed it, but it's not valid, or whether they can't say that. So we already have that argument. So where's this tzricha?
Seems like we believe them in either case, right? If they say ein nemanim leposlo, that means they're believed, right? They can't change their mind. That's understand. And then if you say nemanim, that means they're believed. So what's the difference between the way according to the lashon of the Gemara, if I would say that machlokes is a nemnim versus nemnim, nemanim, okay, that's a machlok. But to say a nemanim neposlo, isn't that the same thing as nemanim?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe I wasn't clear. The when we say ein nemanim leposla means that yeah, we believe that these are the witnesses, but can they testify about the document that there's something wrong with it? So I signed this document, but I was only 10 years old at the time, let's say. Do we believe that objection, right? Or do we say no, once we have a signed document, witnesses sign the document, we go with that document, and even the witnesses themselves can't undermine it.
What if they were to say? What if we were to say, a non nemanim, that we don't believe them at all? Would that be
Well,
a third interpretation? I mean,
no, I mean
I mean,
namanim. What were you saying? Whether namanim to validate it, they don't even need to do that because it's signed by witnesses. You have a executed document signed by witnesses. It's a valid document. The question is, what if those witnesses themselves want to invalidate it in some way and say that their signature was not valid in some way? But we don't need the witnesses to say, yeah, that's our signature. These are valid signatures.
I don't
The
know.
only
How can they say, well, we say that we don't, that we believe them to say that they didn't sign it, or they weren't. I mean, isn't a done deal? This document was signed by them. How can they change their mind? They say, well, it wasn't us, or it's not a valid document, or we weren't there, or I mean, how's it even a question?
well,
Once
so
they signed it, they
that's a good
signed it. I mean, let's say they go to move to Japan. I mean, you got a document in front of you. That, I mean,
That's a good question. So I'm not sure if like what if they're saying no, this isn't our signature. That might be different. What we're talking about here is they're saying yes, it's our signature, but for example, we were 10 years old, so we weren't valid witnesses. That's the case we're talking about here. I'm not sure about the other case. You might be right that if they say no, that's not our signature, that might be universally accepted as an invalidating claim, right? But if they say yeah, it's our signature, that's similar to what we've been talking about, where a guy said "Mod b'shtar sheksava," right? If I admit that I was that this is that I wrote this document, right? But the circumstances were such that I'm taking it back, right? So that's similar to this case we're talking about here, which is the witnesses say that, yeah, this is our signature, but for whatever reason, these signatures shouldn't be accepted. Again, the classic case would be because we were 10 years old. Okay, so they're not disputing that they signed it. They did sign it. But they're saying there's a legality here that invalidates the document, even though we signed it.
well, we were saying before previously that these documents. I think I asked the other day, how do we know this is valid document? And I think you said that, well, it came before baked in. It was validated. So these witnesses come there, aren't they? Don't they check out the witnesses to see that they're the right age, they're not related, they're not in gambling, whatever it might be. These are and they signed it, and what they're signing validates what the reason for their signature. So how can we can't even, how did they even bring a claim? No, well, to say that, how do we even have the Hava meaning to say that maybe they're possible witnesses for whatever reason?
Mhm. So it's unclear if we're talking about a document that was certified by Beis Din or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, even if it wasn't, you have people witnesses. You assume that the witnesses, that it's all in place. If someone brings witnesses for this, that, and the other, even if it's not in bait. I mean, how do we come to even have the Hava meaning that, well, now whatever they did could puzzle the document? It's hard to wrap my head around that.
Well, that's really kind of the machlokas here between Rav Meir and Chachamim, right? um, the Chachamim. I mean, The Chachamim say, yeah, if these are the witnesses and they're contradicting their own, what they witnessed, then we have to listen to them. And Reb Meir says no. So that's exactly the argument. So you clearly side with the Chachamim, but Reb Meir has a different view.
No, all right.
Okay. And so anyway, so the question is, if we already have this argument expressed in that Mishnah, then what do we need our Mishnah for? So tzricha. The Gemara says you need both. If we're only the second brisa, then Vayikamer Rabbanon, that's where the rabbis say that you still need to certify it. The witnesses are believed to invalidate the document, mishum dalime edim umarishtara, because the witnesses have, that's like the highest level of proof, right? And so now they're witnessing that the document is no good. But in our Mishnah, hudalav kol kamine, the giver, the shliv meirah, the former shliv meirah, it is the giver of it's the guy himself who's giving the gift. He doesn't have the same power as witnesses, so amalo, I would think, okay, so sure, witnesses can invalidate a document, but the guy who wrote the document isn't as strong as the witness. Like his level of believability is not as high, so maybe we don't listen to him when he says he's a shliv meirah. And what if we only had our Mishnah? It would be the opposite. It's like, okay, like Rav Meir would say, oh, sure, with the gift giver, we can reject his challenge, right? But with witnesses, maybe he agrees with the Rabbanan. You can't reject the witness's challenge. So that's why you need to show both to demonstrate that Rav Meir and Rabbanan have maintain their positions in both cases. Rabba supports what he said before. Raya be'edim, that our Mishnah is talking about when there's proof given by what is the Raya be'edim? Witnesses, right? As we said before, Abaye says, "My Tama, why are you saying that Raya means witnesses?" So inema, maybe you want to say since all documents have a sentence in them saying, I gave the gift, I'm giving this gift while I'm walking around, like while I'm healthy, right? But in the document dealt with by our Mishnah, there is no such sentence. So clearly, like if the document had said, "I'm giving you this gift while I'm walking around," then that's clearly not the case of our Mishnah, because that clearly states that the guy is not a shliv meirah. So it must be that phrase is missing. Well, if it's missing, does that indicate that he must be a shliv meirah? He must be sick, right? Because otherwise, it's customary to write that in.
Wait a second. But even if he doesn't write, I mean, does that suggest that every kind of document one writes has to have this clause that if they want absence of evidence?
Not that it has to, but it was customary.
Evidence of absence is not absence of evidence, whoever it is.
Right. So, but if it's customary to write that, then if you don't write it, the Gemara is going to reject this idea, right? Like maybe you want to say that. So no, Adarabah, you can say the opposite. I mean, also, like all shliv meirah gifts include the sentence "Kad katzir v'ramei barse" when he was sick and lying in bed, right? So, like if it's customary to write either "I was well" or "I was sick," and neither of those are written here. So neither of those are written there. Shmami Nabari Havi. Maybe we could say he's healthy. So no, as you say exactly, the absence of evidence is not evidence, right? Like you left out these clauses, but that doesn't indicate you left out both clauses. Whether it doesn't say you're healthy, it doesn't say you were sick, so it doesn't indicate anything. So The answer is you could say one way, you could go one way or the other. So okay, mamona b'chaskas mari. So what do? Like you don't know which way to rule, so you leave. You have a chazaka. Who's the owner? Who was always the owner? The giver. So we leave it with the giver. Plukta, it's the Plukta. It's this
Then
this.
that's a classic machloket, I think, between Rav and Shmuel, I think, where muchsak versus amotzi mechaver alavaraya. Well, one side holds muchsak and the other. I mean, this guy seems to go out to shots, right?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Like
Isn't there?
Raya means that we do keep it in the chazaka of who's well. Oh, I see. Like somebody else grabbed it, so he in that possession 9/10 of the lot. Yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah, um, yeah. Okay, I accept that. With Pluknan, there's another machlokas that is relevant here. Rabbi Yochanan Raya Beidim. Rabbi Yochanan says. You need proof with witnesses. It's enough to have the certification of the document by Beis Din. So Asa Rav Yochanan, who says you need Adim, you bring a raya means you bring Adim. Here's a case. There was a case in Bnei Brak. Someone sold inherited property, right? His property of his father who had died, and then the guy himself died. And the other members of the family challenged the sale. Lomar Katan Haya B'Shas Misa, saying that the guy who was the seller, that the brother who sold the land, he didn't have the right to because at the time of his death, he was not of age. So they came and asked Rabbi Akiva, maybe we should dig up the body and check if, see if he had signs of maturity when he died. So he said to him, first of all, no, don't forget about it. We're not digging up any graves here, right? You don't, you can't dishonor the body by digging them up. And even if you did, whatever you find is not a reliable indicator of what was there before he died. In other words, the things may have changed while he was buried, so you couldn't use that as evidence anyway. So
Obviously, they didn't have the birth certificates then, right?
right. I guess not. So Bishlam Ladidi. Okay, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Amina Raiba Edim, I hold that you need witnesses, right? So what seems to have happened is that Rabbi Akiva required witnesses, and they couldn't find witnesses. And they could say, well, we'll be the witnesses if we can dig them up. Then we can witness that he was a katan at the time of the sale, before he died, or when he died. So in other words, if he was still a katan when he died, he was clearly a katan at the time of the sale. That would be edus, but Elodidach, according to Rish Lakish Damos Rai that you say evidence means the certification of the court of the document. How does it help for you to check him, right? Go get the document certified. Well, what you don't need it, right? So the answer is Rish Lakish would say Misaros Nichse Bechaskas Mnei Mishpacha Kaime. What you think that the property in this case is in the possession of the family? No, because the lukuchos and it's the buyer that's coming to wrest it from them. No, that's not the case that was described. We're talking about the land was. They claim the land was sold. They're holding the land. The buyer's holding the land, and it's the family because of the mishpacha come our way, and it's the family that's coming to get it. So the chazaka or the holder is the buyer. And Hachinam Mistabra, this makes more sense. Midikamarlahu, since Rabbi Akiva said, you can't, you can't dig up the body of Ishtaku. And they didn't say anything. So what kind of proof is that? So if you say it was that the family was trying to get it back from the buyer, so they had this idea. We'll dig them up. Rabbi Akiva says, you're not digging them up. They had nothing else to say. But if it was the buyers that were complaining on my shaske, why would they have been quiet? Lame relay, anan zuze yavinan le, linavel v'linavel. They should say, like, we, like, why would you not pick them up? We paid money. We paid our money. We insist that that you dig them up. Like, the family would be expected to respect the remains of their deceased family member, but the sellers don't care, right? Like, they'll say, like, what do we care? We want our money, right? Or we want our property. So Gemara says, no, that's
but
not a good.
the buyers, wait, so buyers have the property. They're not contesting. They paid for it. They're condemned. So what do they have to say here? That it's the family that wants to take the property back.
Question is, who's holding the property, right? So
buyers, right?
No. So that's what we're trying to prove, right? Or that's the point that the Gemara is trying to make here. It must be that the buyers are holding it, and sorry, no, it must be the buyers that are holding it. Because if you say it's the family that's still holding it, and the buyers are the ones that are coming to Rabbi Akiva and complaining, so they would say, so what do we care? And defile the body. We don't care. We want our property.
But they have the property, right?
No, we're trying to understand who has the property. So the story makes more sense if the buyers have the property.
Right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and that's what the Gemara is explaining. Because if you think that the family still has the property, then the story doesn't make sense. Because the buyers wouldn't have accepted Rabbi Akiva's objection. They would have said, we don't care if he's if we're defiling the body.
It's not their body. They don't care.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it makes more sense that it's the buyers that have the property. The family is going to Rabbi Akiva and saying, let's dig up the body, and Rabbi Akiva says, you don't really want to do that. But the Gemara says, no, it could be either way. It could be, it's unclear who is holding the property, because it wouldn't make sense. Because Rabbi Akiva says two things. First of all, you can't defile the body. And even if you did, and if you'll say, we don't care, let's dig up the body anyway. He says it's not going to help you, because the evidence you uncover won't be good evidence. Right? That was Rabbi Akiva said two things, right? He says, first of all, no digging up bodies. And second of all, even if you did, it wouldn't prove anything. So that would be a good, that would shut anybody up. That would say, okay, so it doesn't make sense to dig up the body, because no matter what we find, it's not going to be evidence.
Still doesn't tell us who's holding the property, though. It makes more sense to say that the buyers have the property.
Yeah, I guess. But you could interpret it either way. It seemed like the story was that the buyers had the property, but it could be interpreted either way. Okay, so we had the discussion of if Moda Bishtar Sheksavo, if you admit that you wrote a star, Tzarich L'chaimo, does it have to be certified, right? So Toshma, let's see if we can prove it. Shal Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish as Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, Zuz sheshnuya b'mishnas bar kapara. This opinion in the Mishnah of Bar Kapara, somebody was, he treated the field as if it were his own. He would eat the produce and whatever, and everybody assumed it's his. And then someone comes along and complains and says, no, it's not your field, it's my field. And the guy who had been treating it as his own pulls out a deed, saying, you sold it to me. Or you gave it to me. I have the deed here. If the guy says, this is not the deed. I never wrote this document. Then you should do a kimushtar with the signers. Uh, and Im Amar Shtar Pasim, who said, but if he says this is I wrote this document, but it's not a real document. The Shtar Pasim is um, like I wrote this document not because I was really giving you the field. I wanted to, I know you were going to the bank for a loan. I wanted to make you look like a rich person, so I wrote this document saying I gave you the field. But between us, we understood that I wasn't really giving it to you. So yeah, I wrote the star, but it wasn't a valid star. Oh, star amana, or it's a it was I wrote it while trusting you. You hadn't paid up yet, but I trusted you. I wrote the deed, assuming you would give me the money, but then you never gave me the money. So both of these cases are, I admit it's my star, but there's something wrong with it. If there's witnesses, then go with the witnesses. Then you go with whatever the document says. Lema Rameir, maybe this is Rameir. Right? That the star is valid. And if you can't find the witnesses, then we assume the star is valid, even though it hasn't been certified.
Even in the case where the person who wrote it says the star pasim, then you would still say it's a valid star?
Yeah, that's Reb Meir's view. That if you say you wrote the star, then we assume that it's a good star, right? You can't make these other claims.
So he wouldn't. Oh, right. Okay. We assume you assume the star is valid. You can't say anything.
Right. So Amalei Rabbi says, "Lo, not necessarily. Could be Chachamim also who say that you still need kiyum ashtar. Shani Omer divrei hakol mod b'shtar sheksova ein sorich l'kaimo, uh, because I say divrei hakol mod b'shtar sheksova ein sorich l'kaimo. Everyone holds that you don't need kiyum. So he seems to be saying that no, they're not arguing about it. Everybody holds that ein tzarich l'chaimo, but that's not what it says. It says they argued, right? They argue about it. It's not an ein money plus the money, right? We have they clearly argue about this. So what are you saying that everybody holds the same thing? If the chachamim believe the witnesses, it's because the witnesses are, very strong proof. You call Kamine, but do we believe the writer of the document the same way as we believe witnesses? No, we don't. Amarle. So Rishon and Lakish has Mishimcha Amru Yafa Iru Bnei Mishpacha. But what about that case in Bnei Brak? You were involved in that case. You ruled that the family wins, right? But they admit that the star was written, right? But they're saying but it wasn't valid because the brother who wrote it was a minor. So then Mother Starshik Savo clearly that you can still challenge the validity of the document that you admit was written. Oh, that's what Rabbi Elazar said.
We agreed that the family won in that case. I thought we weren't sure because
Right,
they
machlokas, right? But they had machlokas, but Rav Yochanan took the side of that they can challenge the document, right? And here Rabbi Yochanan is saying everybody holds you can't challenge the document, right? Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan says, I never said that. That was my student, Rabbi Elazar said. I never said such a thing. Amalei Zera, in Yichmar, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, Talmida. If Rabbi Yochanan is arguing with his student, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar says it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, I never said that. So Yichpar Rabbi Yanai Rabbo. So will he also deny what Rabbi Yanai, Rabbi Yochanan's teacher said? because Rabbi Yanai also said, "Rabbi Yanai Amar Rabbi, Mother Shashik Savo, Tzarich L'chaimo." Tzarich L'chaimo. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lo Mishnah Seini Huzu, and Rabbi Yochanan says, isn't that what our Mishnah says? And the rabbis say, that you have whoever has it, possession is significant. And Raya became Mashtar. And the proof is certification of the document. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying is that when you say the document is authentic, is real, then the other guy has to have it he still has to have it certified, right? So like so Rabbi Yochanan seems to be getting it backwards from what he ruled. So Baram,
So is he arguing with his teacher? I got confused there. He said,
well,
what's he saying
we're
about?
trying to prove um so Rabbi Yochanan is we're saying, well, maybe Rabbi Yochanan never said this, right?
Right.
It was said by his student, but then we say, but his teacher said the same thing. So what are you going to say, that his teacher said one thing and the student said the same thing, but he himself, Rabbi Yochanan, said different? Like that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't seem reasonable. So when he says, when Rabbi Yochanan says Divrei Hakol, that everybody holds that you can't challenge the star, this is what he means. Baram Nirin Divrei Rabbeinu Yosef. It seems like what Rabbi Yosef says is correct. What did he say? Yamar Rabbeinu Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Zu Divrei Chachamim. Our Mishnah that says that the gift giver has to prove that he was a shliv meira when he wrote the document. That's the rabbis, right? Rameir says no. It has to be certified in order to be valid. And Rabbi Yochanan would follow that. Umay divrei hakol. So what did he mean when he says everybody holds that it doesn't need to be certified? What he meant was D'Rabbanan l'gabi Rabbi Meir divrei hakol. Like against Rabbi Meir, everybody else says the opposite. Everybody else says no, it doesn't need to be certified. But he admits that Rabbi Meir says it doesn't need to be certified. It does need to be certified. So divrei hakol doesn't mean divrei hakol, means everybody else. Gemara says, well, wait a minute, we have a mission that says backwards. The rabbis say that the guy who wants to take the property away has to bring the proof. So that means that even according to the Chachamim, you have to have your document certified, right? That's the proof. April. So okay, so switch it around. Maybe it's the Chachamim and have like maybe we've misreported and switch the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir. April. Yeah, but we have another brisa. If you have witnesses who say that the document is real, but there's a problem with it, like we were minors or whatever, they're not believed. According to Rameir, and the rabbis say that they are believed. So that's backwards from what Rabbeinu Yossi says. Where it says Epuch, switch it around. But didn't Rabbi Yochanan say that if you have a document that says you got this gift, you have to bring a proof, meaning Eidim? Didn't Rabbi Yochanan say that? Epuch? No, it wasn't Rabbi Yochanan. It was the other way around. And so this is getting a little absurd, right? Lema Epuch nami tiyufta. So then the argument we made to that should also be switched. Where's this love? Even though Rabbi Yochanan thinks that Kiyum Ashar is enough and Reish Lakish needs Eidim, still Rabbi Yochanan was the one who brought the case of Bnei Brak. And Hachi Karmel Le Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. And this is what the case of Bnei Brak was supposed to mean. The case of Bnei Brak was the one where the family said that the guy who sold the property wasn't entitled to sell it because he was a minor. So Bishlam Ladidi, according to me, Rabbi Yochanan Damina Raya B'Hum Shtar, that I say proof means certification. That's how the purchasers took control of the land, right? Ella l'didacht Amos Rai Be'edim, but you who say, you Reish Lakish, who says that the proof has to be witnesses, how did they go down if they didn't bring witnesses? Right? Since there were no witnesses that the dead brother was of the age of majority when he sold it, we wouldn't have let them, wouldn't have let them take possession of the property. Malay, so Reish Lakish answers, I agree with you that in the Bnei Brak case, it's not a valid challenge. And one second. Because he's saying like this claim was a specious claim. It's not really a claim that we would pay any attention to. If they have the document, even though the family made this claim, the buyers would still be allowed to take control. My comrade, because what is the family saying? Katan Haya. He was that the seller wasn't of age. Like who would sign such a star? The fact that there were witnesses on the star pretty much indicate, unless you can prove otherwise, it pretty much indicates that the seller was entitled to sell it, right? The fact that there were witnesses. So that's why, the claim was a weak claim. The claim that the brother was not old enough is a weak claim since the document was executed. Okay. And we'll stop here for today. That was a little
Well, that's
confusing
like
with all
that's like saying that you said, okay, maybe it wasn't in Beit Din, but then that's almost similar to saying that you know who the Adim are. Here, the Adim know who the person is who engineered the document. They said we would know that he's not a katan. I mean, that's sort of obvious to them, right? Unless they check him at the time they did that he signed it.
Yeah, it's like,
I mean, that's what they're doing, right? I mean, that's why they're Adim.
right. So after all this discussion of this case, it turns out Reish Lakish says this is a stupid case because who would do such a thing, right? Like the claim is a stupid claim because nobody is gonna take it without evidence. It's a very weak claim.
I'm still a little confused. What side? Now
Well, yeah, I hope you're
what
confused
Yochanan's
because
opinion
we
is.
kept changing it around.
What at the
Yeah,
bottom line? What did Rev Yochanan? Because then we epoch there and epoch there.
it's unclear to me also, to be honest. I lost the thread of like, which way does he hold? It seems like, yeah, you know what? I also lost the thread. I don't know who we're assuming holds which one. We'll have to go over it a little more carefully and determine which way we end up. But I'll have to leave that for homework. All right, so we'll pick up tomorrow at Itmar. Have a good day.
Okay, have a good day.